Hello, it's me, Kyle. This is Give Pause Hobby, the channel where I stop to appreciate the things I love to fill my free time with. And this week, talking about the cool ideas in Keep the Heroes Out. Last time, links up here, I showed you the cool things, or should I say the cute things. This game is filled with just adorable art. I mean, just look at that cute little green frog's probably not going to show up. Licking that bat. What? I can't remember what those are. Anyway, the game is filled. You're taking the role of a classic monster archetype: skeleton, dragon, gnoll, slimes, ghosts. And the way the game works, this is going to be a co-op deck building tower defense game. And there's some really cool ideas that are at work in this game. But for the first time in the series, I'm going to give you a heads up. I don't think it's a deal breaker for me. I still really like this game, but and this series is overwhelmingly positive about I wouldn't be taking the time to show you about these games if I didn't really enjoy them. But I just want to give you a heads up to make sure there's not unnecessary sticker shock at some stuff inside that have to do with, again, the ideas this time around. Because if you're just focused on components and theming, I think there's no problem because the game is just like charming to a T. So today we're talking just about the cool ideas. So let's get over to the table and I'll show you what I'm talking about. All right, so here's the inside of the box and all the components. Again, if you haven't watched the other video, I go over all the lovely things that are inside because it's a really beautiful game. And just like the cuteness factor is absolutely off the charts, and just the quality. I mean, these are big, chunky wooden components. The one thing I will point out, as is pointed out by a friend, the dragon does look a little bit like a chicken. None of the dragon artwork looks like a chicken, but the meeple does just a little bit. But moving past that, the first cool idea I'm talking about isn't even in the box. Well, it is, but it's in the rule books. So you have two rule books, which is pretty standard. You have your big, actually the rules one, and we'll get out of the way. These are the big giant square rule books, nobody's favorite, but it is what it is. And here is the dungeon book that has all the different scenarios. We'll come back to that in a second. But what I want to direct our attention to is on the back here, not only is this just a handy kind of chart, but the actions in the game. So all these different like symbols that you see are going to be throughout the cards in the game, and I've found that it's just super easy once you get past the teach of what these symbols mean. Then the rest of the game is just dead simple, because if you look at these cards, you know that you can either block or everybody can move. You can poke or do an action or everybody can move. You can open a portal or you can drop a person, two people in the witch's rooms and drop a trap. So there's and the special one, open a portal, get one of each of the resources in the game. Draw a card, poke, poke. We love to call this one poke. It's do an action, but it's poke. So once you get used to the like visual nomenclature of the game, it's super efficient because they don't need to take up any space on the cards with words. It's also, in that case, pretty language agnostic once you get past the rules. I actually don't know how many places it's been localized to, but it just makes for like cleaner card where you can just like have big art sections for the different monsters, and like a really clear idea of exactly what it is that they can do. And then, like I said, the back of the rulebook's great because it doubles as a resource, which I love when they do that, as opposed to lock it away somewhere on the inside. Now, this wouldn't be mind-blowing because lots of games use symbols instead of words, but with the exception of maybe this one, which again, once you learn it, you understand it. All the rest of them are super easy to kind of just understand right away. You know, whether it's like plus card or minus coin, or the move, attack, range attack, make a trap, defend. Like, these just look like what they actually are. So it makes the game super streamlined getting to the table. Again, nothing mind-blowing, but important to point out because that's what some of these other things are built upon. So next up is going to be the simplicity of more simplicity of these simple systems. So these are all the tiles that are in the game, and for most of them, there are going to be 2 different tiles of the same suit. There are a couple of instances. These lightning bolts are kind of special rooms, or maybe they're actually an S. And then there is only 1 treasure room. And then one of the special lightning bolt rooms is the jail room, and there's always going to be one of these in the game. So aside from, you know, the 3 specials and the treasure room, all the rest of these are paired up. And what's cool about this is that at the top of each room is, again, the poke, or the do an action. Anytime you see this, this is just the cost to do the thing. And if you just see a symbol like the frog, or a trap, or a book, that means you're gonna poke the room, boop, and a book's gonna pop out, or a trap, or whatever it may be. And then you're gonna look at other rooms, like here. For an action, you're going to turn a frog into a potion, which is just adorable. I mean, look at that guy. He's so tripped out. This probably isn't focusing. Or you can turn a bone into a beast, or a pet, or, you know, with the collar, or a money into a hammer. So now that's not like the real, you know, it's not all about simplicity. I don't want to make the game, like, the cool thing about this game is that it's simple. The cool thing is that when someone goes over and they poke in this room and they make a frog, or they maybe even multiple times poke it and they build up a little horde of frogs here, other people can come into the room, take that, and move. That's not like a resource that you put in your tableau. The resources just live on the cards. So it's both positive and negative, because you can make the resource and other characters can come in and take it to use it. But unfortunately, the barbarian of the 4 like hero types, because remember, we are the monsters, we're keeping the heroes out. The barbarian, his special ability is that he's going to destroy resources in the room. So it's available as a public good, but unfortunately that means it's also available to be destroyed by the heroes. So the again, simplicity, the layout is great, because the biggest thing is just A, artwork, but B, realistically, you're going to be taking up a lot of real estate on these rooms with your meeples. So having the 2 important things in the room, what suit it is, and then what the action associated with the room is. Later on, you might also need to drop a portal down here, or keep track of any resources in the room, but that's just with a little bit of, you know, careful maneuvering. It's a lot of space to put your guys down. Pretty art until then, and just simple iconography up in the corner. So another win for simplicity and just like streamlined nature of the game. Now, moving on, keeping that in mind, we have this fat stack, and this is the player faction stack. So first of all, on the back of all of these faction cards, which there are, how many are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Does that count that right? Oh yeah, there's 9, because there's 3 of each like type. There is a reminder, whoop, that's upside down, a reminder of how the turn works. Now, this has been pointed out by everyone I've played the game with. This is a great thing once you know what is actually happening. Now, everything I talked about down here, how these are kind of, you can just assume what they mean because they're so simple. This, you would be harder pressed to understand that. Maybe there are people who look at this and are like, ah, yes, you can play as many cards as you want. You can discard a card to reset the market, draw up to 5. You're going to draw the invasion card, and then you're going to pass to the next person. But to most people, they're going to look at this and say, bat, discard, recycle. I don't understand what any of this means. Which, again, this isn't a dig on the game. Iconography is something you just need to learn. But it's nice anytime a game says, hey, we've got some real estate on the back of this. Ooh, let's make a player aid. So thank you for doing it. It's just a little bit of a source of joke for new players, because they're like, this is less helpful than you would imagine it to be. But on each faction, again, the simplicity really allows us to highlight what's special about these factions. The difference is you're going to see how many meeples there are, how many hits they take, how many cards they have. This is all the same. They all have 10 cards. I think this is just a reminder, at the end of the game, you should have 10. So even though that one's not different, all the rest of these are. So then down here is how many meeples are going to start in what type of room. So the evil eye, the crossed swords, the treasure room, the witch's room. And then in the upper right corner, maybe most important, is the action that these can always do. No matter what actions are available to you, because you can do actions on any room where you have a meeple, you can also always do the poke action on your faction card. So the skeletons can just make a bone. The ghost can move and move through a wall. What are these? The ratkin, I think? Or are those the other ones? What are these ones? Imps. These are imps. Also, while I'm looking in here, this is really cool because of the 9 factions, they've already broken them down into kind of what you would look, the different archetypes in the game. Crowd control, defender, supporter. It is all soloable, also obviously all co-opable, but going into it just by choosing one of these types, you're not just looking at this and your deck. The rule book is like, hey, here's kind of their overall feel. Also, and here are some ideas we think you should know about what cards you should seek out. So just super simple layout, 9 things to choose from, which is great. And then each faction has their deck of 10 cards, and I've kind of alternated them up and down so I can see exactly where the different decks begin and end. So again, I'm getting sick of myself saying it, so I'm really sorry for all of you in TV land who are hearing me say it. Simplicity. So each deck has 3 different cards. You have the blue ones, green ones, purple ones. And I think that color scheme is actually true for all of them. One of them you've got 5, another you have 3, another you have 2. And this serves to highlight the one you have 5. Obviously, this is going to be the one you should expect to see the most. Actually, let me just check and make sure that number is true for all of them. Ooh, I'm glad I checked. So it is not. So for the dragon, this is the way it is. For the ratkin, it is also, but some of them are 3, 3, and 4. I can't imagine there are too many other varieties you can make, because there aren't any that are just 1. So when you look through your deck of the faction you've chosen, you can immediately get a good idea of, okay, I'm going to expect to see this one the most. So move and fight or poke. I'm going to see that action a bunch. Less than that, I'm going to have the double ranged attack or a poke. And then less than that, I'm going to have the put the dragon back in the treasure room or double move. So then you can already from the outset have a better idea of what you can hope for when you're drawing up new hands. So having only 3 actions in a deck of 10 cards is great, because it super focuses the deck on what that faction wants to do, but it also speeds up the process for players understanding the role that they should be playing. Obviously there are one of these for each of the factions, so that experience is available for all of them. All right, we got a couple more decks here. So another really cool idea in here is that there are 4 different types of loot cards. You have equipment. Oh my goodness. Pets or beasts or whatever, potions, and magic spells. So again, color coded. They have the symbol up here. These are going to be gated, or you can only get them at a certain room, and which means you can only get them for a certain resource. So the only way you can get items or weapons is by going to this room, having a coin, and turning it in. Now, this is all coming from a common deck. So one of the cool, a cool idea within a cool idea is that you are only seeing, usually this is how I do it, I think that's how the rulebook shows you too, deck and then 5 items that are out and available. So there are times when you'll just be flooded with one type. You'll have a bunch of weapons and almost nothing else, in which case you better either make some money and go to the forge or discard a card and wipe the market. That action. But assuming that you have access to the different resources, then you can actually say, all right, what is going to be best for my faction? And this is where this cool idea really shines. Not only is this already really great because you can spend this much real estate on just the artwork and the kind of vibe, having this like cool gradient color in the back, because down here, the actions take up that much space because they don't have to be explained at all. And this is the really nice part about this deck of the market cards. The different types are going to have very specific roles. And I did not really understand this in my first couple of games. But once I did, then it became really obvious. Even before there was stuff in the market to react to, you could kind of know what resources we should be building up if we're looking for a certain effect. So the beasts always have draw effects. It's not always an either or like this, but they will always have drawing a card. The magic spells will always have this icon, which is this, and the witches are the only ways that you can put down these portals, which allow you to hop around the board without having to be adjacent. So if you're looking to speed up your factions, the spells are going to be super important for you. Weapons are always going to have an option over here, which is usually a multiple action thing, or everybody in the room gets to do something once. It's not always attack, sometimes it's range, sometimes it's move. One of them is draw traps. So as many people as you have in a room, you're going to draw traps, which is awesome because traps just kill a hero as soon as it comes into the dungeon. But you also have this option over here in case you either don't have a lot of people in a room or you're a faction that doesn't even have a lot of people, like the dragon. And then last but not least, this one is a bit of a weird one. For potions, they're always going to have this thing, which is look at the next 3 cards in your deck, and then the arrow means and then do. Then you get to keep all of them that have the shield icon. So this one is the most specific. Like, you don't really get this to broaden your horizons. I mean, the rule book tells you what you should go after. For instance, for slimes, it says, pro tip, focus on loot cards with activate actions to use your special ability more. Or skeletons, in the beginning, focus on acquiring beasts and movement actions. So, for the slimes, they want you to focus on the poke actions, so their poke is draw a card. So the pro tip is, hey, drawing a card is good. You should focus on ways to do that. But skeletons are slow, so they would love to have cards that give them more move actions. Potions are going to deepen your skill set, because if you're a faction that has a lot of shields, like slimes do, for instance, then potions are going to let you look through your deck, pull out a bunch of those cards, and keep them. Because if you're a faction that doesn't have any shields, or only have maybe 1 or 2 in a deck of 10 to 12, then you're going to draw 3 cards, maybe none of them have a shield, and you get to keep none of them. Now that means you're going to be closer to getting a shield next time, but you don't want to be spending a card to draw cards that you don't actually get to use. So you want to say, oh, I'm a faction that has a lot of move icons. So if I get this potion, then I can, when I get this, draw 3 cards and keep maybe all of them. So essentially this card is going to let you draw 3 replacements for it. So again, potions are different than the rest. They are mainly focused on deepening the strategy that already exists in your faction. But I just love the fact that in a lot of games you'll get pretty close. I shouldn't say a lot of games, depending on how often you're buying or resetting the market. Yeah, so there's a beast. That's just a draw, poke, poke. And I mean, look at that spider's face. But the variety in here is not, you could say that for anything. Any deck that has like a common market, Dune Imperium, whatever else. But in this case, they're so different and they fall into those archetypes that it drastically changes how the game is going to, progress based on what's even available. And then if you or your party members are going to be making use of these purchase actions, which in some games you do more of and other games not as much. All right, so last up here is this small and big stack. So this stack over here is your common draw, your invasion deck. So these are the 4 different archetypes of heroes. Your barbarians, which kill resources, your wizards, which jailbreak, your thieves, which break traps. They're the only one that don't get killed by traps. They just get rid of them. And then your archers, which shoot one building or tile closer to the treasure room to kill one of your guys before they even get into combat. And then it tells you where they're going to go. So 2 wizards, 1 on each of the 2 cross-sword rooms, or 2 barbarians on the 2 wizard hat rooms. That's kind of funny. That's the opposite of what I would expect. So this deck is in 19 of the 20 scenarios. This is going to be used, but you are going to include a couple numbered cards based on the scenario that you're playing. And then at the bottom, there are going to be some rules there. Now, some of these are pretty understandable, so either discard a frog or everyone has to discard a card. Draw a card to go directly to jail. But some of them, I guess that one's not so bad. Discard 2 coins or discard a card and draw a jail card, not draw a card that you actually want. So some of them down here are going to be a little bit more situational. You're just like, I don't know what that means. But that's where the dungeon book is going to come in handy, because for each of these scenarios, like number 6, the Midnight Munchies, it's going to tell you, sorry about the glare, the background, the layout of the dungeon, special setup, and that's going to go along with tell you exactly which cards you're going to add to the deck. But down here are going to be special rules. And this is where I'm going to interject with just kind of like a fair warning about the game, because I think there are 20 scenarios in here, and the 20th one is wild. I've only made it through the first 7 or 8. The 20th one, from my understanding, just replaces this basic deck, and it has these like super leveled up heroes. So they're just, really good at what they do. Everything is just made worse for you having them in the world. So the 20th one is very different. But the rest of them are using this archetype of like adding a couple cards, might be more than 2, depending on the scenario, and then add some rules, and then a couple special rules from the rule book. This one should be 0. As in, not like it shouldn't exist. This should be welcome to keep the heroes out. We will teach you the systems, and that is it. Because I will not lie, when I played this solo for the first time. And when I have played with the two different groups that I have, well, 3 different groups, but only 2 of them, we played this scenario first, because I finally learned that this is kind of brutal. The whole conceit of the game is that you have 2 arcs. You have the first phase, where every time you get to this part of the turn, remember that thing right there, then you're going to draw however many cards are up here. When you get to the bottom, there are no more cards to draw. It tells you to flip this over. Now you're on the back side, the second phase, where it's going to tell you how many cards to draw, and if you get to the bottom, you win the game. Now you might think, well, what's the point of this if it doesn't change? There are other modes in the game. So the first level difficulty, you're going from drawing 1 to drawing 2. Or the mean version of the game, you're going from drawing 2 to drawing 3. So there are options there, which means the arc of the game is not very set, but it's typical that the beginning of the game, when things are easy, just like in any real base builder or tower defense, you want to maybe be stretching out your plans to see if you can kind of shore up what you don't have. That's where you're going to be visiting the market a bunch to make your cute beholder. To make your factions better at things that they might not be good at, or make them even better at the things they already are. Because as the game goes on, the like kind of combo effect of this push your luck, the more heroes that come into the dungeon. Let me get the helper here. Every time the heroes invade, you go through this flowchart. This is kind of should be its own cool idea, because this is super helpful. It's a little bit of, a lot to take in at first, but again, when you're kind of returning to the game, this to me is great because I can follow through this visually the first 1 or 2 times, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I remember how it goes now, as opposed to diving into the rule book. So part of this is you summon the heroes, and then you're going to go through the thing when they come in, and then they're going to reactivate. They're going to reactivate all exhausted heroes. That's if you run out of the. Here it is. Inspire heroes. So once the heroes have activated, and they may or may not have been killed by a trap, if they survive, now you're going to inspire all the heroes that are already in the room. So you might already have, I talked about this last time, I have the basic version. These, in the deluxe version, these are wooden meeples like the monsters. But I like this because on one side it's very colorful, and on the other side it's grayed out. So this means he's tired. He got sleepy after fighting. And he's just going to sit there until another hero, might be the same type, might be different, boop, 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 either gets placed in there or moves into his room. At which point, he's going to flip back to the excited side. And they're going to do a few things. They're going to look for a treasure chest. They're going to first look to fight your monsters. Then they're going to look for a treasure chest. And if there's neither of any of those in the room, then they're going to move on to the next room. So if you're just leaving heroes throughout the dungeon, then you can have these like cascading effects of a new hero comes in, maybe finally takes care of that treasure chest, and they're exhausted. They're tired from getting the treasure chest. But now they're waiting there. So the next time a hero comes in there, they flip, and now there's nothing in the room, so both of them move to the next room. And it's this kind of steady build of threat in the game, which is cool once you really understand what's going on. But in this first one, the first half of the game is really pretty easy to stay on top of taking out. And this, I was playing on normal for the most part. I wasn't playing on crazy. It's not necessarily the easiest to win, and that's part of the challenge. Is that the early part of the game, you're like, I don't understand where the fun of this game is. I'm just kind of like cleaning up the floors and maybe getting some market stuff, and we'll see. And then the middle part, you're like, oh, okay, here's the challenge. We can't take care of everything every turn like we could earlier. And then sometimes the end of the game is like, boom, the heroes win. So there's a couple things working against this first mission. It's slow. people don't quite understand the threat of the game, which is like, you know, the heart of why you would want to play. And then sometimes you just lose in like punch out fashion. So the second one I think is a lot nicer. First of all, there are 4 of these cards, so you're going to see it more often. The whole sending people to the jail is another push your luck element, because you can do that to draw more cards, or in this case it makes you, until there are a bunch of things in there, and then if a wizard is drawn into the cell, everybody activates and, you know, moves out. So I think the second mission should have been the first should have been the 0th. So if you're looking at maybe finally tabling this game, play the first one solo so you can learn the rules, and then just start it off with the second one, unless you're playing with people who don't really want to be challenged a ton, in which case the first one is great. But I really do like, you know, the other thing is over here, the special rule was only what happens when that card is drawn. Same thing with number 2, but it's just a little bit spicier, and there are more of them. And then in the third one, still only that card. However, once we get to the 4th one, we start having multiple special rules over here. Now we're up to 3. Now we still got 3. I think that's pretty much like 2 or 3, and then that one has a 4. Until we get over here, and we have sometimes a bunch. So obviously these ones, you're probably not going to be able to have this flowchart up, because you're going to have the page open to here just so you can remember exactly what they all do. Which again, this isn't so necessary once you really have the flow of the game. But yeah, to cap off this part of the cool ideas, this and the fact that there are 20 different scenarios means you can probably, within this game, usually, you know, us, you know, hobby board gamers, we have a pretty good sense of what games would be good for what different groups. With a game like this, you could actually find what scenario would be good with different groups, because this isn't a campaign. Nobody needs to play through all 20 of these. You don't need the same players. You can just say, hey, here's this fun game. I know what your and your play styles are. Let's do scenario 9, because I think we're going to have a super fun time. And I think that adds a lot of replayability to this game, which I'm excited to delve into in the future. All right, so that is the cool ideas that I found in Keep the Heroes Out. And again, with a little bit of just like, hey, look out for this. Your mileage may vary. I think that having a spectrum, not just a spectrum of the scenarios, but a spectrum of difficulty, or rather a spectrum of the intensity, like the rules intensity and crunchiness, is an important thing, because there are different players in this industry, in the hobby, and sometimes even, you know, the heaviest of players just want something light to kind of have fun, chat, and play a little game. So just go into it knowing they are numbered 1 through 20. Does not mean we need to do every single one of them, or every one in exactly that order. There is one in there that's, I think, number 3, that I've played 5 different, maybe 4 different times. I have yet to beat it. Did not stop us from saying, you know what, let's go try number 4. Because it's not like a Gloomhaven or ISS Vanguard, where you're just like, you know what, let's just like not do this one and skip this part of the game, because that's not what those games are designed to do. I think that needs to be reminded. When games are not campaign based, they don't necessarily have to follow those same tropes. You don't have to always do everything in the game. And again, for the scenario 1, I recommend that as scenario 0 to train up how the game works and just immediately go into the second one. If I could do it again, I would not have introduced this game with only scenario 1 to that one group, because that's how I started the game. But I was like, all right, I don't have time tonight to play another one, but I'm going to try another one tomorrow, right away. But with that game group, I so far have not played this with them again, and I don't know what their interest is going to be, because the beginning, again, we were all kind of like, we don't really see the issue. Where is the challenge here, or the tension? And then the middle game, we're like, oh, okay, I see this. And then got a little bit more heated, and then all of a sudden, boom, there's just like this alpha strike that just happened. And we could have done better and prevented it, but really it was just a confluence of events that was sort of just, well, that happens sometimes. And after a slow start, fun middle, and then sudden end, it's, if you're not ready to immediately follow it up with another one, maybe don't do that one. Just start them off with number 2. But again, I'm really looking forward to trying out all the different factions. I've used most of them at this point. And it's pretty fun solo. It's just like true solo Spirit Island, like one spirit, one island. You really have to lean into your strengths and try to shore up the weaknesses that you have at the same time. Because in a co-op mode, you can have, the dragon is great for clearing up chaff, while the other ones are opening portals or making resources to buy more cards. But when you're the only one, and you could multi-hand it as well, but so far my solos have just been, again, true solo. But I'm excited for this for family sort of things as the kids are getting older, but also like right now, adult family members or just who aren't super into board games. But for us, like true diehard board game folks, I am excited to push up into those 2, 3, 4 special rule pages in the double-digit scenarios to see what those are all about. Again, we haven't quite made it there yet, but at this point, I'm excited to get there. So that has to stand for something, right? So anyways, that is Keep the Heroes Out, the cool ideas that make it tick. So thanks for taking a pause with Give Pause. If you've got this game and it's been on your shelf for a while, like it was for mine, it wasn't on for too long, but get it off the shelf, try it out. And until next time, happy gaming, and we'll see you then.